Hello traders, and welcome to lesson 18 in the ReadFX Beginners Forex Trading course. In this lesson then, we're going to look at trends and consolidations. So let's start with trends. Trends are a directional move up or down that print a pattern of higher highs and higher lows in an uptrend and lower highs and lower lows in a downtrend. Now we have covered trends in a previous lesson, so I'm not going to go too in depth right now. Consolidations are periods of sideways movement when the market is contained or indecisive, and examples include ranges and inside bars, and we're going to look at some examples on a chart in a minute. Transitions are the periods of change that happen between trends and consolidations. So here we can see an uptrend, and at some point we change into a range before again changing back into an uptrend. So the points at which this happens, so at either end of this range in this case, this is a transition. So let's go to the charts and have a look at some real examples. Okay, so here we are in TradingView, and straight away what you can see is that we have a nice downtrend, which then turns into a range and then a continuation of the downtrend. Now, what I'm going to do is just break this down bit by bit, and I'm going to talk you through the trend, the range, and the transitions, okay? So, first of all then, let's start with the easy bit that everyone recognizes. This is very clearly a downtrend. We have a high and a low, and we then make a lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, and another lower high. Now, the transition is the point at which we stop making this pattern of lower highs and lower lows, because if we continue to make that pattern, then clearly we're still in a downtrend. So let's just zoom in a little bit and see if we can pinpoint the exact moment this happens. So this high is lower than the previous one, that's good. This low is lower than the previous one, that's good. So at this point right here, we're definitely still in a downtrend. We then make another lower high, we're still in a downtrend, but here, crucially, we fail to get back to this low and break it. So this isn't actually the first time in this trend it's happened. In fact, you can see it right here. So I'm not drawing this on because it's not the significant high or low, but there is a high, there is a low, and this low is actually higher than the previous one. However, you can see that the next high was roughly the same, and then we absolutely smashed what I would call the significant low at the time. Now if you look here, that didn't happen. So this low is now the lowest low in the downtrend, okay? So this becomes our significant low. In other words, if this downtrend is to continue, we must break this low. And if we don't, if we're not breaking lows, we can't be in a downtrend. So this low is now significant. So here we make a higher low. We then make a higher high, but this high is not significant. Why? Because this one is, it's higher than it, okay? So what we've done now is we've started to move a little bit sideways, which you can see the market does here, before we drop away again. So you'd be looking at this and thinking, this could easily be the same scenario. The market's just going to go a little bit sideways, and then we're going to have a big push down, and off we go back into the downtrend. Now that doesn't happen. So what happens is we struggle and we make these two highs at the same height as the previous one. So we can't be in an uptrend because we're not making higher highs, and we can't be in a downtrend because we're not making lower lows. So at this point we have transitioned, we have gone into something else, okay? Now what market behavior does not make higher highs or higher lows? Well, that's a range. And if you look now at this point, we very clearly fit that criteria. The highs are the same height and the lows are the same height. So we're now in a range. So in this period here, we have transitioned. So a transition then is just when the market switches from one market structure to another. It's hard to pinpoint the exact place where this happens. For me, it's the point at which I become confident in the new structure. Some people want more confirmation than others. Some people want to see the market repeatedly failing to break a high or failing to break a low, and at that point they will say we're now in a range or we're now in another structure. So it's a little bit different for everyone. It's hard to make money from transitions. Really what a transition is just a warning that what was happening before is not happening now, and you should be aware of what could happen next. So here we're very clearly in a range. This is a false break of the range. Now at this point here, this could have easily been a transition into an uptrend, okay? We broke these highs, we came down for a retest, and at this point here, what you'd want to see is that the market pushes up, breaks this high, which it doesn't, you can see it wicks back in. We'd want to break this high, come back down and retest it, and then confirm by breaking this high, okay, and then off we go in an uptrend. So this would have been a transition into an uptrend. However, we didn't get that. Market continues sideways in the range, couple of false breaks out to the downside, and eventually we get this. Now, if I just zoom in on these two candles, this is a 1 hour chart. If I was to go down to a 1 minute or a 5 minute, this is a very clear break and retest pattern. In fact, I'll draw it on. If I go from the open of this candle down to the low and then up to the high of this candle, we've got this, okay? Let me zoom right in so you can clearly see that pattern. So if I just hover, there you go, you can see a very clear break, retest, push down and confirm this break. So that is our break and retest, which would have been very, very visible on lower time frames. Now then, we've broken out of the range. So if we're not ranging now, what are we doing? Well, we need some confirmation. We're in a transition period. Why are we in a transition? Because the market has stopped doing what it was doing before, and it's now doing something different. But what it's doing now that's different, we don't yet know, because it hasn't made a new structure. So all we know is it was in a range and it's now not in a range. So is it going to form a new range? Is it going to reverse and form an uptrend? Is it going to do a downtrend? We need more structure to know. So we make a lower low, we make a lower high, we break this low here and make a lower low. We're now making a pattern again of lower lows and lower highs. So if we're making a pattern of lower lows and lower highs, we must then be in a downtrend. Okay, so hopefully that was a nice example, a nice real example for you of a downtrend transitioning into a range, transitioning back into a downtrend. Okay, so we've covered trends, ranges, and the transitions between trends and ranges. Now, one thing I want to do is just cover another point about consolidations. Okay, so down here I've marked up on this 1 hour chart an area of consolidation. Now this is actually an inside bar pattern. You can see the mother candle here, and all of these candles within it are the baby candles, and eventually we break out and off we go. Now it's important to note that this is a 1 hour chart. Now on this chart this looks like a very tight consolidation, okay, but it's down to your perception. You can see in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of this move, this little area down here looks like quite a tight consolidation. If we now go to a 1 minute chart and look at this exact same area, it's going to look very different. Okay, so here we are on the 1 minute chart, and this green rectangle is the one that I just drew on the 1 hour chart. So this is that exact period we're now looking at. And you can see this does not look like a tight consolidation at all. In fact, it looks like a massive range. So consolidations then, it's a matter of perception. If I just take my fib tool and draw this on here, okay, let's get rid of the green rectangle so that we can actually see what's going on. And this now looks like an enormous range, okay? So ranges and inside bars are the same thing. It just depends on the time frame you're looking at it. If you go on a weekly or a monthly chart and look at an inside bar pattern, on a 4 hour or a 1 hour chart, it will look like this. It will look like the biggest range you've ever seen. Okay, so consolidations, whether they're large or small, in other words, whether they're a range or whether they're a tight consolidation, is a matter of perception. It literally just depends on the time frame you are on. Okay, so if you're a 1 minute trader, then as you've seen here, a 1 hour inside bar pattern to a 1 minute trader is a massive range. Okay, so in this lesson then we looked at trends, consolidations and transitions. In the next lesson then we're going to look at news events.